right, welcome to this episode of Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman, and I am your host for today's show and likely many more to come. So I've got a really special guest on today, a man I met at a speaking engagement in Boston for Gathering of the Kings. He is quite a businessman. He has written books. He has got hot rods he builds by himself. And he's just a really cool dude with a very deep spirituality. So I'm excited to have Rodric Lenhart on the show today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Angela, thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Welcome, man. I'm just excited to know you. We've had quite a few
Likewise.
conversations in our lifetime, so I'm already. So I'm excited to just get on today and talk some spirituality, some faith, some God with you because I don't know your story, but we're about to find out.
Rock and roll.
I know, right? So you start. I'll let you start today. What would you like to tell us about your life with God or without God?
Well, we'll give you a good hook to put out there. I was I was raised Catholic, and I started in Catholic school, and that's why I'm not Catholic anymore.
Okay. That's why I didn't
We
go to
can
church at
start
all
there.
because my parents were raised that way.
Yeah, we so I started off doing, I got my first communion, I did all that stuff. I left in third grade because my parents couldn't afford to send me anymore. We grew up with no money. And it just wasn't, it was very much going through the motions. We went to church kind of, sort of, maybe once a month, definitely on Easter, definitely on Christmas. And it was that, do you think you're fooling God? Like these were the thoughts I had when I was a kid, as I'm in the school where they're telling me how important all this is. And I'm watching my parents who were well-meaning. That's why I was in Catholic school, right? I'm sure they thought that it gave me a better foundation, and it did give me a head start moving into public school, I think. But the it gave me a sense of kind of moral boundaries as a youngster, but it was that fear-based.
Mm,
There's a man in the sky who controls everything. He's watching every move, and he's going to help me hit home runs, and he's going to, help me ride my bike better. And if I do anything wrong, lightning's going to crash. And by the way, give us all your money. You're supposed to live in a mud hut in your underwear. I actually wrote a blog post a long time ago called "A Mud Hut in Your Underwear."
I think you might need to write it again. You might need
It
to
was,
resurrect that.
yeah, it was no pun intended. But it was an interesting foundation, and I've grown. I've had waves of wanting to go back to church. I joined the Unitarian Universalist Church in Charlotte when we were there,
Oh, familiar.
um, mostly because of just an amazing preacher in Jay Leach. And I always remember the way he said poem. He would read poems. And he was a big Emerson guy. He was a big Thoreau guy. And you left every Sunday just heart full, like, oh my gosh. And then
Cool.
he left, and you realized that it wasn't really the church. It was just Jay. Like I was just
Yeah.
there for Jay. But I loved that they were all inclusive. Any denomination could come there and worship. And they were it didn't matter what your sex was, what your sexual preference was, what color you were. It was stewardship of the earth. It was caring about your fellow human being. It was kind of the things that resonated with me as
Hmm.
spirituality.
Hmm.
So I really enjoyed my time there. And we moved, I guess 4 or 5 years ago up here to the mountains. And that was kind of it for any kind of formal, I will say, religious, I will also say in quotations, practice. Um, but I would consider myself you hear that term a lot, spiritual, not religious. And
Yeah.
I would certainly say I fall in that bucket. I care very deeply about other people. I care about leaving everything better than I found it, people
Hmm.
and the earth included. And I think all of the great teachers basically had one idea. And the fact that someone else was born on the wrong side of the river and they don't get in
Yeah.
just never never resonated with me.
Well, I think you hit it earlier. Like it was most religion is fear-based. Most religion is to keep people in line. And it's man-made. It's man-made in all intents and purposes. And so we get into these religious discussions about God. And I firmly believe that most of the religious discussions about God don't actually come from God.
I would agree.
So I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear how that's worked out for you though in your life, right? What that's led you to.
I was probably in my 20s when I really started reading like Deepak Chopra. I'm a big Chopra fan, Wayne Dyer, like those guys.
Yeah, I love Wayne.
So I got into like How to Know God, Deepak Chopra's book, and things that kind of from a more metaphysical slash biological slash scientific way of like how does quantum physics relate to my experience of the world
Mm-hmm.
and God, in that, there's this quote, and I'm gonna mess it up, but it's, above the halls of science reads, you must believe. And you have to have faith in
Mm-hmm.
order to be a scientist. And you would think that those are two opposing things, and they're not. But I was in my early 20s when I started. Obviously, I read a lot. Like, this is a
Oh yeah.
tenth of my books that you can see in the
Yeah, yeah.
background. I read every day. I never miss a day. It's how I start every day. I read, I write, and meditate every day.
Love that.
And that's my church.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in just sitting with your thoughts, and it's why I build hot rods. It's when I'm not coaching, when I'm not present with somebody, I'm in that shop, and I typically don't have any TV or music or anything on. I'm just literally building cars from scratch inside my head, and it's where I do my best thinking. But it was those books early on that kind of led me to that there's something bigger out there, and that I can meld the two. I'm analytical. I consider myself pretty science based.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a space nerd. Like I'm the guy that pays for the ticket to go see Neil deGrasse Tyson, and just I was watching Carl Sagan explain something last night on YouTube. Like, I'm that guy.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And but at the same time, like, when our sun is one of a trillion suns, and then every sun, one of a trillion planets, and like the enormity of our universe, there has to be something else behind it. There just has to be.
Yeah.
There's another reason we are here. And I know I'm kind of going off a little off script, not that there's a script, but um, I believe we're spiritual beings having a temporary human experience, and that Earth is very much a school, and that we pick what we come here to learn.
What have you
And
so in that vein, I don't mean to stop your thought, but in that vein, what have you directly experienced that has allowed you to know that there is a creator, if you will?
um, most people would call it coincidence, and I don't believe in coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken a word that mean coincide, which is two angles that fit together perfectly. We've taken that to mean happenstance. I don't believe it's a coincidence that you and I met, that
Right.
I've known Chaz for how long, and he invites us both to the same thing, and then now you and I are buddies, and
Yeah.
now we're having this conversation. Like, I believe that people come into your life for a reason, and most of them are there to teach you something, and it's your job to figure out what that thing is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So who taught you the most impactful thing in your life then?
That's a really big question.
I know. That's a lot of pressure right there. That's a lot of pressure.
Probably my mom, who she died 5 years ago, almost to the day, and
Mm.
um, I dedicate my first book to her. But that anything's possible. Like, we didn't have much, but she never, when I had crazy, she's the reason I'm an entrepreneur, and I believe I'm capable of anything.
That's awesome.
It's the reason I'm fearless when it comes to business, when it comes to ripping apart a car, when it comes whatever
Mm-hmm.
that thing
Mm-hmm.
is. You you can always put it back together, and you don't know until you try. And I would have the craziest ideas for businesses and stuff when I was a kid. And she's like, how do we do it? How can I help? Like,
Yeah.
so I think she was definitely all of my biggest lessons. And I still look back on a lot of the things that she didn't even know she was teaching me.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. And you're right. Anything is possible as long as you believe it is so. Yeah. Yeah. So you said you meditate, you journal, you read every day. What is
Yeah.
your, and I know I want to get into a little bit too about your foundation that you have, because I think that's a really important thing that you're doing work for the creator's kingdom, if you will, right? Um, so talk to me a little bit about that path. Like how did you end up really starting to pour back into people around you and recognizing your innate spiritual gifts and skills?
Really good question. The On a personal level, like I'm gonna come at it. We're gonna Tarantino this a little bit. You cool to
Got it.
Tarantino this a little
I'm
bit?
down. Let's do it.
I'm I'm joining a coaching program that I was in previously and I left, called Black Belt. And there's two levels to Black Belt. There's Black Belt and Boardroom. And I applied, I got accepted, and one of my friends, she's the head coach for Laura Higgins. If you follow Laura, like she's amazing. She's a coach for digital creators, but Laura's in Boardroom, and my friend Darby was like, "What are you doing going back in Black Belt? You need to be in Boardroom." So I reach out and I say, "Hey, I'm thinking about Boardroom," and they give me kind of the canned response, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think they're recognizing I already did 14 months with you guys. Like I know the drill. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
been following the bouncing ball here for a while, and they go, "Oh, okay. Well, what's your revenue, et cetera?" There's certain qualifiers you have to get in, and they send me the document yesterday, and it said, "This is what Boardroom is not. Who it's not for," is how it was phrased. And it was the summary. I won't give you the bullet points, but the summary is like, if you're ego driven and you're just here to take and learn from everybody else and never give back to the group, like this is the wrong group for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm after. Like whenever I join something, I quickly find myself the only person that's like, and here's what I learned, and here's what I learned, and here's what's working for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's what I want out of a group. I don't want to hear the guru talk about how great he is every day.
Right.
There's 1,000 ways to do it. You're a hammer, everything's a nail. I don't want to just hear your way. I want to hear
Yeah.
from the collective. Here's what's working for you. And that can be in business, it can be in sports. It doesn't matter what it is. You were just with your tennis pro, right?
Yep.
I was a pitching coach for a lot of years for baseball. And, I would tell these kids, these are tools for your toolbox. This is how I would suggest you do this, but I want you to make it your own. The end result has to be the same. We have to throw strikes. Got to get the ball over the net.
Mm-hmm.
But how you get there doesn't matter to me. Here's what I would suggest. Try it on. If it works, great. If a piece of it works, great. And when you can have that hive mind where now there's 100 people that are bringing what's working in their little
Mm-hmm.
niches, that's when you really start to accelerate learning. So I've always been that guy that I can't count how many businesses have been started because I'm at a bar with a guy who works for someone else. He's like, I've always wanted to start my own thing. And I'm like, why aren't you? Let's talk about it. Let's work.
Yeah.
And then 3 hours later, he's like signing up for his EIN and has an LLC, you know? And it's like the guy that used to do my decks, his name's Thru back in Charlotte, and he's doing tens and tens of millions of dollars in custom homes. And it's like things like that never would have happened. And then here's the unlock, Angela. I figured out that people will pay you for your brain several years ago.
No way. No way. I had no
So
idea.
all this free advice I've been giving out for 25 years, it's like, oh wait, people want that. They need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but so that's kind of the person that I am. Now, back up to all of my businesses had some kind of charitable aspect to them. We would give money and donate time and travel, et cetera, for Habitat for Humanity was always a big one because I was in construction.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically the men's shelter and crisis assistance ministries in Charlotte. We did a lot with them, and this was fun. And it's an idea for your audience that it doesn't always have to be. And this will all come back to the foundation because I want to tell you the story about how they basically just asked me for money, and we'll get there. um, I was at a party for volunteers for the men's shelter and crisis assistance. And I overheard the person behind me talking about how they never have socks and underwear. Like, because everyone donates jeans and sweatshirts,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, but
Mm-hmm.
they either can't take or people don't give socks and underwear.
Mm-hmm.
And that what do homeless people need? What do people are like? They need those things more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, light bulb goes off. I said, we're gonna have a party, and I ended up naming it Socks, Undies, and Oysters. And
Ah,
it was a big oyster roast in the fall. And I had the students, the chef students from Johnson Wales came and they cooked, and I had
fun.
bands from Charlotte. And the first year we had maybe 50 people. By year three, Angela, we had truckloads of socks and underwear because you had to, your
Wow.
entrance fee
Was
was you
bringing
can eat
them.
all the oysters you want, but you got to bring socks and underwear. New, by the way, new packages of socks and underwear. And we would fill their coffers so much that they had enough for the year and could donate to other cities.
That's
And it
awesome.
was just all this from this idea that didn't cost us that much to put on that party. It was a couple $1,000,
Yeah.
but the awareness of what that created, and it's just it goes to show like if you just listen and you get creative, like you can help in ways that aren't just stroking a check,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So fast forward to I sold my business in 22, moved up here to the mountains, wrote the first book, semi-retired, quote unquote. No entrepreneur ever retires. We just get old. Wear a
Ah,
tracksuit.
we just move on to
Um,
something else.
and I knew we wanted to do something. I knew I was going to be a coach. At that time, I was not coaching specifically home builders. I went through the same journey most coaches do, where you niche down and niche down, niche down, niche
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out you're not Tony Robbins. You're not going to make a lot of money as a life coach. I'm sorry to tell you. So, um, the we reached out to a charity which will remain nameless, and I said, hey, I'm writing this book, I'm building this thing, I'd like to donate our money to you. And they were like, cool story, when you get $100,000, let us know.
Oh, I think you told me this story, but the listeners need to hear it for sure.
And I'm like, F you, and you won't have to worry about 100 grand, you won't have to worry about $1. Like, unbelievable to me that you wouldn't just take $5 if I had it. So there's that. So we decide, okay, what are we going to do? Looked at a couple other different charities and foundations, and then decided to just start our own, which is called Send a Student Leader Abroad. And here's a fun story for you. It's SASLA, right? Not salsa, SASLA, SASLA. And I asked Nicole to marry me when we were 12, and she said no.
Oh.
And played the long game. 30 years later, we got back together. And in our high school yearbook, there's that acronym, SASLA, and neither one of us knows what it means. And we think it was like our AOL screen names, like Schnicky and Supercoog. Like, it means something. But that's where we came up with the name. So if you ever wonder what Send a Student Leader Abroad, like we made it fit that mystery acronym from
I love it.
1998.
I love it.
So we start this foundation, and I reach out to, it's another sign of like being directed and what's possible, and with a big enough how any why is possible, right? And
Mm-hmm.
true salesman, I went in. Are you familiar with EF Tours?
No,
So Education First, they're based out of Boston. They're $7 billion company,
got
70,000
it.
employees.
Yeah, we did talk about this, but I think everybody else needs to hear it too.
Yeah, so think like middle school kids that go to Europe, even though they go with their teachers, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
20 kids will go to Europe with their teachers is the best way to describe it. But they go all over the world. They have gap year stuff, they have language studies, they do a lot. I went in through the contact us box on EF, and I emailed the CEO, Eddie Holt, on LinkedIn. And I said, you don't know me, but I've got this idea and I want to do this thing. And the next day, someone wrote me back and was, okay, crazy person on the info box. And Eddie Holt, the CEO, wrote me back and said, this sounds amazing. I want to introduce you to Lori Van Dam, who runs Holt Prize.
Love it.
So this starts this waterfall of building this thing into something. We didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't know how we were going to get there. And ultimately, they were like, well, why don't you just donate to they called it a global education fund. Why don't you just double the investment for our, And I was like, oh, okay. Like I was just kind of going along. Like that doesn't feel good. Like I don't want to just be the dude who writes a check. Like I want to impact kids somehow. Like how do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And the people there specifically, and I'll shout them out, like Terry Troutwine specifically, and A House, and then some of the people that have just meeting after meeting with us as we developed this thing. And there's no money. I'm just this dude. They're just these people at a corporation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we build and we build and we build, and we decide we're going to do a 12-month entrepreneurial program for sixth and seventh graders, and they have to earn at least $1,000 with their small business.
Mm-hmm.
And once they earn that thousand, they've signed up for a trip already with their school, but there are kids that can't afford to go on these trips. And that we will step in as long as they earn their thousand, we'll step in and pay for the rest of the trip. So they get coached by me and guest speakers. And just like I do my six-figure guys that pay me, they get the exact same education, these sixth and seventh graders.
Love it.
And at the end, they get to go on an international trip. Why is that important? I believe in the very fiber of my being that if every kid went to the other side of the world for a couple weeks in the summer and understood that there is no them, there's only us, and that everybody wants exactly what you want. You want to have world peace, you want to end war, you
That
want
would be
to,
it.
the them that people talk about, the them that are our enemies, that it's just never ending. That's how you fix it, I
Yeah,
believe.
I agree.
And so my goal is to send 1 million kids abroad. And it's a $5 billion goal. I don't have $5 billion. And I have no idea how we're going to get there. Well, we had 117 schools apply to be our pilot school for this program. We ended up in Katy, Texas, with an absolutely amazing teacher named Jillian. Our first kids graduated last week.
Oh,
All of them earned enough money to go on their trip.
I love it.
Our new kids came in last week, and we're starting round 2. And it was the most amazing, fulfilling year with these kids to watch them grow and they're knocking on doors, Angela. They're getting told no over and over and over
Yeah.
again. They're understanding how many no's does it take to get to a yes? Okay, if I need this many sales, how many doors do I need to knock on? What's every no worth? I talk a lot just with my guys, 40-year-old guys. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sales 101, man. Sales
sales 101.
101.
I get paid every time I'm ghosted. I get paid every time I'm told no. Like, you
Mhm.
have to look at it that way. And these kids now understand that versus these kids. And if you're listening, I'm holding my phone up and I'm facing my phone.
Yeah.
These kids are learning AI-proof social skills that are going to be the commodity in the next 20 years.
Yep. 100%.
And combine that talent that they're learning and that skill set that they're learning with a global perspective. It's powerful.
It's very powerful. And I'll say and I think you and I talked about this because I was reading this book when we met. So the third book in Conversations with God in that series, the third book in that series literally talks about how do we as a global community change the awareness and consciousness of the world, right? And that's it. It's education. It's the way education systems in the world are run. Kids are taught what to believe, how to believe, what to do, and what not to do by these people who are teaching them that may or may not be conscious and aware on their own. So, doing programs exactly like you are doing, teaching these kids how to be aware, teaching them how to be present in life, letting them understand what they love to do and what they enjoy to do. If every child grew up that way, there would not be world strife the way it is. So that's why I want to talk about it today because it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And it's one of those things where I get, I'm human. I get annoyed with people just like everybody else. And when I see the virtue signaling, it's like, okay, I'm going to change my Facebook profile to Ukraine this week, but what are you doing? What are you doing about it?
Yep.
Nothing. Like we've lost the days of pitchforks in the street and You know, it's a
Mhm.
very, very small percentage of people who are they're just going to complain
Mhm.
and binge Netflix that day.
Yep. Yep.
So
No, I mean
how,
it's true, and the lack of action toward the things that you believe in. Most people don't even know what they believe in anymore, and that's the unfortunate part. I had a call, a presentation 2 weeks ago with a group of women who are CPAs, right? And asked them very simple questions like, "What do you love more than anything on earth?" There was silence. People don't even know what they love anymore. People can't pinpoint that. So you get fed whatever the media wants to give you, and then you do what the media tells you to do. You're not even doing what you actually believe in anymore. So how do people
there's
like
very
you and
little original
I,
thought.
yeah, how do people like you and I help people become more aware and conscious and understand who they are as human beings and what they actually believe in and do action in order to help fix the problems? How do we do that?
Yeah. We write books called
Hmm.
Million Dollar Flip Flops. We have
Yep.
podcasts like this one.
Yep.
You know, you heard me ask that question in front of the group in Boston. You know, why do you get up every day other than a paycheck and it can't involve money, power, or notoriety?
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about silence?
Mm-hmm.
And these are people with families. These are people who vote.
Yep.
These are people who do well at their job, you know, or they're
Yeah.
entrepreneurs or otherwise, and they've never even thought about the question.
Nope. Nope.
Frightening.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. Like I think we should be clear on that. Like
No,
we're
we're a
raised,
product of the educational system.
yes,
Legitimately.
100%,
The
which was
educational
made by
system.
Ford and
Yeah.
Carnegie and
Yeah. It
you
teaches
know.
you how to pass a test. That's what the educational system is. It does not teach critical thinking skills at all. Doesn't teach you how to actually know each other and gain conscious awareness. I'd be interested to see, you bringing up, especially your foundation. I'd be interested to see how many schools out there, like actual full-blown schools, are teaching children this stuff when they are in elementary school, because that's when they're closest to the creation, right? That's the closest of when they know who they actually are. Like your job and my job, we are here to help people remember who they are. Like
Mhm.
that's our part of our soul existence on earth. You're doing it through your foundations, you're helping through your coaching, I'm helping it through my coaching, the other programs I have. But if we're here to teach people who they are, the best time to get them is when they're little, because that's the closest to their contract, right? When they got here, what they were supposed to do. How do we
Yeah,
do that, Roderick? How do we solve that problem?
I remember Wayne Dyer talking about he was traveling somewhere and he was with his daughter Serena and it was in the middle of the night and she was just like had this very Asian dialect out of nowhere. And I believe in past lives. I believe, Brian
Mhm.
Weiss's book, like Many
Yep.
Lives, Many Masters. Like I believe all these things. And I do think you come here for a reason. And I think you bring all of that with you. And through our education system specifically, and I think it's you probably know, but it's like, it's kids that like are 3 and 4 years old where they still have that past in them.
Yep.
And you'll see it come out. They come into this world with personalities. You know, it's the whole nature nurture thing, but like
Yeah.
they
Well,
they
our
come in as
worldly
little
our
people.
worldly memory really kicks in between the ages of 7 and 8. So if we're catching these kids before then, right, before they really are fully rooted here and have that full remembrance, they still have, to your point, a signature remembrance of where they came from. Um, I mean, that's a fascinating thing to think about. What if we take these kids that are 3, 4, and 5, right, and identify their God-given gifts at that point in time and help them then throughout their lifetime? There's some sort of program that helps them throughout their lifetime to develop those. Like maybe we get closer to solving the problem.
Yeah. And letting your kids be who they were destined to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't regret playing sports as long as I did. And I played baseball for a long time, then I coached in Charlotte for a long time. But the had kids go to the pros, like super fulfilling. Same bucket that gets filled with these kids in the foundation got filled with baseball, which was 40 hours a week for 5 months of the year. You know, and
It's
I
a
didn't get
lot.
paid. It was a lot. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't my kids. I don't have kids. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
was new group every year. But um anyway, the arguments I remember when I wanted to quit baseball, wanted to quit sports, and my dad just would not let me. And because he failed at baseball. And so he was living
Mm-hmm.
vicariously through me, forcing me to play
Mm-hmm.
the dream he didn't fulfill. And it's like, had he just let me read more books and let me be a little businessman and put me in entrepreneurial programs instead, not that those existed in the early 80s, maybe they did, but how would my path have been different? And you know, I had to go through everything that I've been through to get where I am, and the evidence is I did,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that too.
I
So I
mean, we
don't,
have to learn, like we have to learn to your point, right? We gotta learn and we gotta figure that out. And how do people like you and I who see this though become good stewards of parents with small children and become good stewards of the education system in order to help them really identify what their purposes are?
yeah. I mean, it's a sea change. Like it's a structural.
Hmm.
It's way bigger than we'll cover on this call. But in another, I think another rabbit hole you could go down, and I don't want to, but I'm going to bring it up, is when you hear the people who talk about AI and how it could really eliminate the need of for work. And if you think about the fact that you could create all the food you need without a human being, and you could create all the shelter you need without a human being, it starts to get to the point where you would have more of a Socratic society where we can
Hmm.
just sit and think, and you don't have to go run the press to
Well, but they're
survive.
they're not going to allow that. Instead, we're going to have these things, right?
Right.
Yeah. So everybody's brainwashed.
But and you can get into whole other things like contact and
Hmm.
there's so many other
Hmm.
directions you could go with that, but stories for another day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Man, we could just sit here all day probably and solve the world's problems. So if there's somebody out there who's listening that's kind of like they're on the fence. They're like, what about this religious stuff? I'm not really digging that. And what about and where am I with spirituality? What would you say in your journey was like something that really, I know you said Deepak Chopra's book. What else in your initial journey through this whole maybe not Catholicism into something else? What was your path there? What did you read, see, absorb, learn?
There was somebody, and I couldn't tell you, I could probably GPT it at this point, but it was, if you can't find God in a flower, you're not going to find him in a church.
Mm,
And I remember hearing that, and it resonated, and it still does, and I still remember it.
yeah.
And if you can't find God sitting in that chair where I read every morning,
Hmm.
you're not going to find him in church. It's wherever you go, there you are. And I think the best analogy is people that we'll relate it to business because that's our worlds, but people that hire to solve their pain. They hire employees to fix them and their
Mm,
business
mm,
versus providing an environment that that person can thrive in by working on themselves.
yeah.
And they
Amen to
wonder why
that.
they lose talent. They wonder why they can't attract A players.
Yeah. What do you suggest? And obviously we don't turn this into a free coaching call, but what do you suggest for entrepreneurs and business owners out there who struggle with just that, creating that environment for their employees to work on themselves and make these kind of connections?
Get a coach. you have to have you have to have somebody outside of you looking at your situation. And it's not just, at least for me, I think it's a pet peeve of mine. Like I went to Brown, I got my ICF as a professional coach so that I can coach human beings at the highest level. People who call themselves a coach and aren't necessarily, that's
Hmm.
okay. And I believe that it's all these books is what makes me, it's
Hmm.
my having traveled to 65 countries. It's the other things that make me good at what I do human to human. But I think ultimately you need somebody outside of your situation. And I'll relate it back to business to give you an example. In my world, somebody typically thinks they need to hire an estimator. They have too many estimates to do. They, but only 4 out of those 20 that month are going to be customers.
Mm-hmm.
So me looking from the outside and having been where you're trying to go, I'm not going to bring on $100,000 a year estimator to still get the same four jobs I was destined to get anyway when those 20 came in the door. I'm going to add friction to my sales process
Mm-hmm.
so that only the four good people make it through.
Yep.
And that costs $0. And
Yep.
now I've just freed up.
Disqualify. That's my favorite word in the sales process. I can
Yes.
disqualify. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
But when you're in it and nobody, and you don't talk to somebody who's A, outside of your situation, and B, has walked the path that you are on, you would never put those two things together. You're like, well, I have to get more estimates out because that's how I get jobs. No. Becoming a differentiator in your niche is how you get jobs. Becoming a C of one is how you get jobs. Becoming the person that people come to without talking to anybody else is how you get jobs.
Yep.
Not more volume.
No.
So, or I should say both are possible. One's a hell of a lot easier and costs a lot less money.
Well, and bottom line is we are all only meant to work with certain individuals, period. And
Yeah.
you have to recognize who is naturally attracted to you as somebody that you're going to be working with, and everyone else who is not. And if they're not a good fit, you just have to let them go and go find the person they are meant to work with. Or maybe they're not ready, and so they come back to you in 6 months or a year or whatever. That's one of my favorite things to tell my clients is like, dude, if they're telling you no, they're doing you a favor. That's actually a gift because you're going to chase them. You're going to be running after them. Maybe they're not going to pay on time. Maybe they're going to give you friction. They're not going to do the work you're telling them to do. Like they're doing you a favor when they say no. So don't chase them.
Yeah. And I want to finish the thought on the last piece, but I do want to talk about that because that's a really important thing. But back to having a good coach and somebody that's outside of you. Ultimately, you're a human being dealing with other human beings, whether they're your team or their customers, etc. And every decision you're making is to gain pleasure, avoid pain, right? Human
Mm-hmm.
nature 101. So you need somebody on the outside to point out that fear of, well, I can't hire anybody because I don't have any jobs, and I'm not going to get any jobs because I'm wearing every hat. And you do that for 40 years and call it a life, or you have somebody that reaffirms the fact that if we hire this person and now you're freed up for 40 hours a week to do nothing but get jobs, it's unreasonable to think you won't get one that will pay for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's just those little shifts, and understanding of why are you afraid? And
Yeah.
when you really start to be a toddler and say, but why, and you get down to, well, my dad was a failed businessman and we had trouble eating when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay. Now
Mm-hmm.
we have something to work with. Now we
Yeah.
have something.
Yep.
So I just want to put the kind of finale on that. But
Thank you.
I want to ask you, because I struggle with this, as I'm a really good salesperson. And if I want to close you, I probably can.
Mm-hmm.
I also know it's not in my best interest to do that, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
serving you if I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I still struggle, and it's something I talk with my coach about. So I'm curious of your viewpoint on this. But I am very much pull, not push. And I will cancel appointments. I will say, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we're a fit right on the call. And then, of course, like all things, like when your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you in junior high, you want them even more. And
Yeah.
now but why can't we work? I thought we were going to work together. Like, you get the people like that.
Yep.
But it's hard for me as a salesperson. I know I can help them. I know they could pay me. I know, and I'm just not to just let it flow. It's hard, still hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The surrender process in life is impossible. Like, for me, when I have had the opportunity to work with people I shouldn't work with, of course, like especially when you're just a person with a service heart, like you just want to help everybody. But the act of surrender is just your way of being in line with what the universe wants for you, right? I mean, you don't get to, so many people struggle with, well, I'm not successful. Well, you don't get to success until you learn how to be a part of the flow. That's it. And once you learn how to be a part of the flow, you get to the level of success that you believe and can see yourself existing in. So That's how I wrangle it. I'm like, okay, well, if I hang on to this one person and I'm not surrendering to the flow of the universe, then what door is going to get shut for me somewhere else?
Yeah.
What timeline is going to get taken away from me? What other person that was meant for me is no longer going to be able to come in to my flow. So that's how I deal with that. Hmm.
Yeah. I think of that example of and it was probably a Tony Robbins thing, honestly, where he's like, the lady wants a boyfriend, but her closet's full. And when she makes half the space in the closet for the future boyfriend that's not theirs clothes, suddenly
Hmm.
they start showing up.
Hmm.
And it's that space to allow.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like, look, I tell, I've got one client who really struggles with it. And I said, look, you end up taking in this person who isn't meant for you. You don't get the next person that you really want to have. And then that exact scenario happened for him. And he was going to take on a client that wasn't quite ready to work. And it was obvious to me the signs that they weren't quite ready to do the work. And the next client that came out the door is somebody who's working on big projects and very well known. And it's like, you had taken on this other person, you wouldn't have had the bandwidth. So
Yep.
you just gotta be patient, trust that God has got you, and listen to the signs. Yeah. So good.
There's You'd appreciate this. We'll put a bow on this, but I had somebody reschedule today, and she is the carbon copy of somebody that I'm letting go from
Hmm.
coaching.
Hmm.
I mean, sounded the same, almost looked like she was in the same car. Like one's in Austin, one's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like, but same first letter, the first name. Like there was too many uncanny similarities.
Uh-huh.
And I can totally help her. She's in another program that's not working. We book in a call for today that she reschedules. And I said, no problem. I'll cancel the call. I didn't even offer to reschedule. She's like, can we
Right.
reschedule? It's like,
Right.
sure, I'll cancel the call. Well, what about Friday of next week? And I said, can I ask you some questions? I'm reading this right now as I'm
Hmm.
talking to you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you some questions before we rebook? She said, of course. I said, were you able to review the documents? I sent her, like what program looks like, some podcasts, whatever. Not yet. I'll have time over the weekend once the family leaves, excuses, excuses, excuses. And she was very much on the call like it's that snowflake syndrome. My market's different. My people are different. My jobs are different. No, they're not. They're math
No,
and their
this
business.
right here
And
is different. This right here is different.
so I said, no worries considering the holiday. I said, how important is it to solve the challenges you're having right now in your business? Would it be nice to dig out, or is it more serious than that? She wanted to reschedule for next Friday. If I have a piece of glass stuck in my neck and I'm
Yeah.
bleeding,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need a tourniquet now.
Yep. Yep.
So it's serious. I need to improve our position by spring. So I'm looking to see the difference 4 to 6 months out. I said, okay, and Friday of next week is your first available time to get back together. Oh, next week's pretty stacked playing catch up from the holiday. And it's like, we're not
Okay,
going to
well,
reschedule.
you don't really need the help then. You don't really need the help then. So we'll just move forward without that.
You have 80 hours next week and
Yeah.
you can't find one to talk with a guy who's done what you're trying to do.
And is gonna help you.
And I'm not even selling her anything yet. This is just a
Yeah.
strat call, come up with a
Yeah.
game plan, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but they don't see it. And
Yeah.
my whole point of me sharing that with you is it's one of the most frustrating things about being in a position to help,
Mhm.
seeing people who need it, knowing you can help, but like this particular person just does not have the mental tools to, it doesn't matter what I give her.
Not right now. Not right now. And maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, she comes back, and maybe you let her come back. I see that often. I have people who, I help people with their money and cash flow and all that. So these people are a lot of them are in desperate situations. And when I see people, I have people like that all the time who are like, "Oh, I can't really afford to do this right now. I can't really start the process right now. I don't really have time for that right now." I'm like, "Okay. All right. Don't call me back. Don't call me back when you're like bleeding out." Because
Right.
we won't have time to fix it then. Then we'll be out of complete time. So, speaking of which, we're out of time on our episode today, but I
We
think
could go
we could
for
go
another two
forever.
hours.
We should, yeah, we'll do another one. We'll
Did
do
we
another
cover
one
what you
too.
wanted to cover, Angela? That's my
I mean,
concern.
we did. I think we did. We got your story out there. We talked about synchronicities. Like, we know God's out there, right? We need to solve the awareness problem. That's what you and I need to do. Let's figure out how to solve the educational awareness problem, and then we'll come back on and talk about that.
Yeah. And if your folks want to help me solve the educational awareness problem,
Yes.
they can go to
Yes.
sasla.org
Yes, they
and
can,
find
and it will
out
be in the
more
show
about the
notes.
foundation.
Yes, and it will be in the show notes. I love it. It's so good.
Don't go to salsa.org. That is a whole other website.
Yeah, no, SASLA. SASLA, SASLA. Yeah.
That's it.
Yes. Rodric, thank you so much for being on today. And we will get you back on. We're going to do another one for sure.
Absolutely. This
Yeah.
was a ton of fun. Time flew by, and absolutely we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to Evolve Through God this afternoon. Make sure to check out Rodric's books and SASLA in the show notes. And hope you guys have a great afternoon. We'll catch you on the next episode.